And we're coming to you live for the Bill Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason and Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network and wherever you are in the free Odyssey app. Good Tuesday morning. We've got a Game 5. Knicks and Pistons tonight at the Garden. Hopefully the Knicks take care of business and move on and get ready for a Celtics series where that's going to be very intense, and hopefully you feel like they'll have a chance to beat the Celtics if they take care of business tonight against Detroit. A record-breaking day or record-tying day for Brandon Nimmo in a huge blowout. Mets over the Nationals. That was fun to see. Yankees end up losing, but they got a couple issues there for sure, but nothing to totally panic about. And we've got draft fallout. I mean, you had viral video yesterday, Boomer viral video. I had a viral one on Friday. You had a viral one on Monday. We are the viral boys on the Fan. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Jim. Doing well. And, good. I mean, Brandon Nimmo was amazing yesterday. It all happened in 3 innings, too, by the way.
Yeah.
And watching that was, that's one of those, that's a mail-it-in game for the Washington Nationals, and it's a pile-on game for the New York Mets, but that was great to see him. And also to have Jeff McNeil back in the lineup now for 3 games, and he's hitting every single game. And Carlos Mendoza said after the game, if Jeff McNeil is pulling the ball like he did yesterday and he hit the home run, then, all's right in his world from a hitter's perspective. But, quite frankly, what I was thinking about yesterday was, that's your healthy 9-man or 8-man team. When you think about it.
Yeah, with Alvarez being back and McNeil being back,
that's
for sure.
Your healthy team right there. That is your New York Mets until they, get to the trade deadline to decide to add or, whatever they're most likely pitching. But I would just say that if that's going to be the team and the team is going to, put up offensive numbers like they have. Now, the bullpen has faltered a little bit here.
Got some issues there. There's no
but
two
I also
ways
give
about it.
A lot of credit to Griffin Canning. This is a guy that's fought through, guys on base, bearing down when you need to bear down. So, I mean, that's a nice little find right there for the New York Mets.
And this was someone who, I wasn't as familiar with when he ended up signing. And then you go back and you look at his numbers and you go, this guy could not have been worse and still had a job in the majors. They are really pushing this pitching lab deal. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he doesn't even make the rotations. It's some depth. But then you get a couple of injuries. The Montas injury, the Minaya injury, so now he's got to be a part of the starting rotation. And this guy's been nothing short of spectacular, which is incredible. I mean look at the numbers. 2.61 ERA and a 4-1 record, 31 strikeouts to 14 walks for Griffin Canning. I mean, anybody who's ever managed Griffin Canning, every other pitching coach in the majors looks at that and goes, how in the hell is that going on with this guy? And hopefully it continues. But the rotation with these guys who we're talking about a second year in a row where on paper doesn't look great as the best ERA in baseball.
Yeah, right. And David Peterson has the highest ERA at 3.29, which would be considered a very good ERA.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is one of the reasons why they're out to the start that they're out to. But the offensive output, even though they collapsed 2 days ago, it's really been fun to watch. And they're going to be one of the better offensive teams in the league this year, and hopefully that will continue. So, when they lose games, it's going to be like, I can't believe they lost that game. But then they're going to come back and they're going to bounce back because that seems to be kind of like the mindset of the team. It was that second half team that we saw last year that they've carried now into the first half. And this, again, and we can say this until he finally really starts to heat up. This is really with a mediocre Juan Soto offensively.
Yeah, that's right. And you haven't seen the best of him, and it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue when you're winning. You're 11 games over 500. You're 4 games up in the division over the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, if everything was flipped, if the records were flipped, we'd be screaming and yelling and telling this guy to get out of town and trade him at the trade deadline already with the start that he's had. But it's fine. And Steve Cohen said, I'm not worried about it. Of course, he wasn't going to say he was going to be worried about it. That would have been weird if he did. But he was asked about it. He's not worried about it. I don't think anybody really is with the way that they are playing. And he's actually being used as a positive, just like you did. They're 11 games over 500 in first place. He's barely woken up.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's when he goes on a heater, man. Watch out.
Yeah, and he will. Of course he will. He will. He's out there every single game. He will. I guess the only thing, if I'm and I'm not very concerned, but the only thing I would be concerned about is piecing this bullpen together and not blowing a ton of games with them being down and dealing with some injuries and who knows what's going on with Edwin Diaz. And can the rotation stay this good with those guys? So those are the questions they have right now.
Inevitably,
they have to slow down a little bit.
It will all slow down. But then on the other side of it, it may heat up offensively like it has. I mean, they are an offensive juggernaut. And even with guys that are hitting around 200, they're like Brandon Nimmo, for instance. He had his breakout game yesterday. He's a quality baseball player. You love the guy on your team. You got to have guys like him on your team. And you're not going to be benching guys that are, making the money that they're making and have the contracts that they make. You got to fight through some of the hard times with them. So it was good to see him, go off yesterday and, tie a Mets record. I mean, 9 RBIs basically in 3 innings. It's insane.
Yeah.
3-run homer and then a grand slam was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was good to see because, of course, he hasn't looked totally right as well this year. And then he's been dealing with some foot stuff that's been lingering through the end of last year, the beginning of this year. To see that from him is tremendous. And, of course, I mean, they end up blowing him out. There was never any question if they're going to win this game or not. But, it felt like a game they had to win with the fact that they weren't going to go down to Washington and lose 3 out of 4 to that team. That would have been brutal.
Plus they gave up a huge lead in the game before.
Yeah.
So you got to shelve that one, forget about it, as Carlos Mendoza said, and just worry about what's up next. Flush it. That's right.
Flush it.
And speaking of flushing it, you and I, like you said, we go viral on all of our different takes around here when it comes to the draft. You on Jackson Dart, me on Shador Sanders. I just wanted to say something. I was one of those players. Because I went back and I looked at a lot of stories that were written about me around my draft in 1984.
Yeah.
I got taken off of a few guys' teams' boards.
Sure.
And I think I've often told you this story that we had the combine down in New Orleans. And on a Friday night, the University of Maryland, we had our football dinner, if you will, and we were celebrating our year and everything. And the next morning, really early on Saturday, we had to fly to New Orleans. And we ended up spending about 8 hours at the combine, going through all the medical. I wanted to throw at the combine, so I threw at the combine. Steve Young did not throw at the combine. I was coming off of a shoulder injury, and I had separated my left throwing shoulder in the Sun Bowl, and Citrus Bowl. And then I wanted to still throw. I wanted to show the NFL that I was okay, that wasn't anything major, and I was throwing it all over the Superdome. I mean, I was throwing it everywhere. And I had meetings down there, and I remember getting on an elevator, and I was so ticked off because me and my Maryland teammates hadn't eaten anything from, I want to say, when we got on the plane that morning, because they told us not to eat anything because of blood work and everything.
Yeah.
And then we had to go through all the workouts and everything.
Oof.
And then it was probably, by that time, by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were at the Hyatt across the street from the Superdome. And we get into an elevator, and it's got me and maybe 4 of my teammates with me from the University of Maryland and a whole bunch of other people on the elevator. And I'm going off about how the NFL is treating us. And I'm like, this sucks. This is supposed to be NFL. They need to be taken care of. Something along those lines. Complaining, just being boomer,
Yeah.
And I know that Dan Henning, the Atlanta Falcon head coach, was on the elevator, but I didn't know it at the time. And I found out later on that, Dan Henning said, there's no way we want that guy on our team. That guy's going to be a pain in the ass. And I remember, and I was sliding in the draft just kind of like Shador and other players who have slid in the draft, as Mel Kiper obviously put it out there. And, it really is. It's when you have a meeting or something happens with a team as they're doing background checks on you or just checking up on you, talking to people in your life or whatever it may be, because they go into deep, more so now today than it did back then. But I remember the Bengals head scout, his name was Frank Smouse. Went out to East Islip to talk to my high school football coach.
Yeah.
And my high school football coach, much like he did for the University of Maryland, trying to convince Maryland to take me from East Islip, he told the stories about me playing for him in both football and baseball to Frank Smouse. And I went back and I looked at the scouting report that Frank Smouse had on me. And it was a lot of what Sal Ciampi said about me. And that's one of the reasons why the Bengals ended up drafting me, because of my high school football coach.
Because Smouse went to your house.
Well, he went to the high school, didn't go to the house. But
but
you know what? He also went around the neighborhood
Yeah.
He looked to see where I lived and, where the town I grew up in, what kind of town was it, all of that stuff. And then finally ended up making it, obviously with the 38th pick or 37th pick, whatever the hell it was.
A lot higher than 144, right?
It was, but still, nonetheless, it's still a drop. And it's an embarrassing moment for somebody when you do drop in the draft, especially when you're expected, as Mel Kiper had me, as the number 3 player in the draft. And you keep dropping, and you're wondering, why are you dropping? Now, there are other reasons why, because the USFL was obviously still in play, and Steve Young had just signed a huge contract with the LA Express, Jim Kelly with the Houston Gamblers the year before. So that stuff was still around as well. But there was just a whole group of reasons why a guy would fall. And that happens every year to all different positions. And some guys don't even get drafted. Like, you remember when Tyreek Hill was coming out of college?
Yeah.
Of course, they had a first-round grade on him. Did he get drafted in the first round? No. But what he did, in college was reprehensible, but somebody wanted to give him a second chance. And he made the most of the second chance. You can say whatever you want about him now, but he made the most of that second chance. And he got a huge contract from the Miami Dolphins. And I would just say that Shador Sanders, like any of us who have slid in the draft, you got to use that as fuel to the fire that is it's got to keep burning in your gut that you want this job in the worst way. And this is why I said this yesterday. He's going to go in there and he's going to have this attitude, and somebody's going to take him under his wing. Maybe Myles Garrett takes him under his wing. I don't know. But then who takes Dylan Gabriel under their wing?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I still think there's a decent shot that if he goes in there and hadn't learned anything from this process, Shador, that he gets cut. I mean, they already, they went and got Kenny Pickett. They obviously got Joe Flacco. Those guys are going to be on the roster. They draft Dylan Gabriel, so you're allowed to have the 3 quarterbacks dressed during the game. You can have a practice squad quarterback. And you're telling me with all the stuff that Shador, who he thinks how good he is and where he should be, is going to accept a practice squad assignment, then they'll probably end up cutting him.
Well, I will say, he is, by every measure at the moment, he's a needle mover.
Oh, yeah.
He's a needle mover, and he's a needle mover when it comes to PR and it comes to press and it comes to clicks. Do you remember Dan Lanning, the head coach of the Oregon Ducks?
Yeah, they're all about clicks and we're about football.
Yeah, remember, we're about wins. They're about
the
clicks.
Yeah.
I mean, that tells you all you need to know. This started way back when, 2 years ago, and it probably started at Jackson State, too. Who knows? But I just think that he now has had a come-to-Jesus moment. It's real. It hurts. It stings. And you got to hope that he can handle it mentally and figure it out. But again, it's a weird team. It's always been a weird team with the quarterback situation. And this quarterback room is the nuttiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't know if, okay, so Joe Flacco for sure is not going to be there for a very long time, but he's going to start.
He's 40 years old.
I would imagine he's going to start.
He should, but you know what's going to happen? I mean, the story is going to be Shador Sanders. That's all it is. I mean,
that's why I think there's a chance he could be cut, because if he's not doing anything in practice to separate himself, I mean, why would the Browns want to deal with that? I mean, he's going to have to go in there and impress the hell out of that team with his abilities. That's what he's going to have to do.
And he's going to have to go in there and he's going to have to show that he's a good teammate.
Yeah.
And that, and if he's like, Instagramming live and doing all these things other than worrying about football and playing football, then he's not going to be there for long. But I just think like Kevin Stefanski has just put himself and that team like right in the crosshairs.
Well, they've been in the crosshairs for a long time.
No, but I mean,
a lot
really
of stuff.
This is going to be a media frenzy. It's going to be a media frenzy, and that's the needle mover part of all this, and that's great. I mean, that's what they want, and that's what they're looking forward to. It's going to be that.
Yeah, but he's also the 4th quarterback on the roster. So, like, when everybody shows up to camp, sure. But then what? Like, he's just taking reps like everybody else. It's not as if he's the start. I mean, maybe gets into a preseason game towards the end, but I mean, there's only so much you could say about the guy who's the 4th quarterback on the roster.
I know. This is why I like what Pittsburgh did with Will Howard. They'll end up with Aaron Rodgers, and Will Howard will be there, and he'll learn. This is why I like what the Giants did with Jackson Dart. They have Russell Wilson here. He's going to be the stabilizing force, and maybe Jackson, has got to come in. He's got to learn how to call the snap count, and
Yeah.
call a play in the huddle from a professional standpoint. And obviously, Brian Dable likes him. And if you listen to Todd McShay, you would think that he and Brian Dable were sleeping together. You would. I mean, you could tell that they are like they are tight.
Wow.
They are tight.
I mean,
You could hear it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he had all the Jackson Dart info early on. He talked about some of the things that Brian Dable was thinking, and then after they have their draft, Todd McShay is, I mean, just extolling the virtues of Giants brass like you wouldn't believe. So, I'm with you.
So there's information going towards Todd, and Todd's using that information like he should. That's his job.
Yeah.
That's what he's supposed to do. But I'm just telling you, they are buddies. They are tight, and all that information that he had. Now, there's two other things that happened during this draft. Obviously, the Jax Ulbrich prank phone call to Shador. Now, these prank phone calls happen every year, by the way. This is a high-profile prank phone call, and they did it knowing that he would be on Instagram Live. They knew that he would be on social media.
Yeah.
So, this generation of the social media meatheads are out there, and that's exactly what this was. And think about this for a second. Carson Shane. He puts Jackson Dart out there on social media. Like, now all of a sudden the executives and the coaches and probably some of the owners, Brick Johnson, who knows, are on social media putting their stuff out there and basically exposing what their dads are doing or what they're thinking.
Yep. More than a couple of them. Yeah, I mean, this is a new way to find out.
It's crazy.
What teams are thinking is just start following their kids on social media.
It is crazy. And the kids are, and I'm sure the dads are.
They don't love it.
I can't see how they could love it, but what do you do? I mean, it's pretty cool. Your dad's a coach or a GM in the NFL, and you have access to information. And you just can't help yourself because you're on social media.
Yeah, of course. And like if this happened in 1985, there'd be no record of it unless someone pulled out a camcorder, and started filming it. Where here, it could be filmed, it could be posted in a matter of seconds. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different world all around. And I'll tell you, Carson Shane now 2 years in a row. One, he was right about the quarterback, at least, in Jaden Daniels. Two, he was right about who they were going to draft because he knew how much he loved Jackson Dart. Puts out the highlight reel the day before the draft. Incredible.